Everybody ready? All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March meeting, the last meeting of the Town Council for this winter. Round of applause? No, for the end of winter, that is. All right, if everybody could please rise for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Call the roll, please.
Mike Buswell.
Here.
Mary Isaac.
Here.
Michael Culhan.
Here.
Bill Mecca.
Here.
Ann Sather.
Here.
Jennifer Winchell.
Here.
Veronica Lenzen.
Here.
Richard Wolf.
Here.
Jason Marsh.
Here.
Anthony Dorsey.
Here.
Ashley Gaudiano.
Here.
Carl Massaro.
Here.
John Foreman.
Here.
Joe Pifko.
Here.
Scott Wick.
Here.
Joy Colon.
Here.
Steve Lemoyne.
Here.
Kelly Malazzi.
Here.
Tony Cinto. Kevin Shively.
Here.
And Nicole Satin.
Here.
Thank you, full house. Nice. Nice to be all together once again. Before we get to some of our business, I want to acknowledge three young men here this evening with us who are observing our meeting as part of their work as Boy Scouts in Troop 67. We have Joseph, if you'd stand up, Joseph, and Jaden, and Farhan. Welcome to our meeting tonight. Scouting is a great pastime. You learn a lot. This evening you'll learn a little bit about how our town government functions. I hope you take away some inspiration and some information that you might use for yourselves down the road and in your scouting. So we're happy to talk with you after. If you're still around, I think our meeting will extend for a few hours into the evening tonight. But all ears and eyes, and we wish you well with all your scouting. Thanks for coming tonight. One bit of housekeeping. I want the council to know I received, as the chair, from Attorney James Cordone, certification that our planning and zoning members have completed their training as annually required by state law, and we'll put that information into our minutes and into the council record. So next on the agenda is I'd like to approve our minutes. Is there a motion to approve our minutes from the April meeting? We have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? It's February meeting. Is that what I said? April. I'm thinking ahead. Just don't call me Nostradamus, but I am thinking ahead. Okay. No motions to amend, so call for vote. All in favor, please raise your hands. Anybody opposed? Abstentions? The February minutes are approved. All right. Next, we will have a public comment. We have a full sign-up sheet this evening. As you know, the rules for our public comment is that such comment is allowed for any item that's on our agenda, whether it's a discussion item or any of the resolutions or other business that is listed. There's quite a number of you this evening, so I would ask you to please be concise in your remarks. If you have remarks that you want to hand up to us, just acknowledge that. And as I call you up, please give your name and address. And if you are a little further down on the list and you've happened to have heard somebody say what you want to say, you can say you support that and maybe shorten some of the commentary this evening. That said, we're willing to hear anything and everything you have to say. So with that, let's start with our first public speaker. That's Marlene Silverstone.
Good evening. I am requesting
that the town council postpone any decision that allows the Community Building Facilities Committee to proceed to the next step until questions related to use, size, traffic, and safety are answered. Also, prior to proceeding to the next step, I request that the town council have the architects provide a written feasibility study incorporating the plans, narratives, and supporting documentation of what is being proposed for the Grace Church property, 5958 Main Street, before any further action is taken. The PNC chairman at the 8/24 February 2025 proceeding stated that their responsibility was to review the intended use of the property at the 10,000-foot level, that it was not to opine or decide on intensity and the exact usage. The latter was the town council's responsibility. We have continued to hear that at this stage, this is a concept. But even with a concept, there are details that should be known at this stage. These details include, number one, what are the days and hours of operation of this building? Number two, what are the activities, hours, and days of operation for the community center? This question continues to be the elephant in the room. Even in the 2/28/25 updated frequently asked questions page on the town's website does not provide an answer. Is this building going to operate similarly to the library, which has a community room, or is it going to operate like the Branford Community House, which was used in the traffic study? At the February 2025 Community Facilities meeting, the committee stated that their responsibility was to recommend a building and not how it operates. The first selectwoman stated at the end of the meeting that it would be her responsibility regarding the building's operation. The problem with this is that there are no written standards/restrictions, and it's subject to the personal discretion of whoever is in the selectman's office. The Branford Community, just to let people know, the Branford Community House houses both a senior and community center with full recreational program hours, anywhere that could be from 6:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday, and on Saturdays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is situated in a more urban setting and not in the suburban setting that the proposed Trumbull Senior Community Center is in. It is located on its own lot and abuts 4 streets. There are sidewalks, crosswalks, and one-way streets. Meadow Street, which abuts one side, has a commuter rail behind it, with commercial storefronts that are more industrial-type businesses. In the back of this community center is a public recreational field built in the 1930s. The community center was opened in 1963 and renovated 56 years later to its current size. Number 3, what is the basis for the statement that if the building were not used by the community after normal senior center hours, the footprint of the building would be the same? This is a conclusion without showing what information and standards led to this footprint. Why isn't there a narrative from the architects showing what the standards input the current building is meeting to support this assertion? On February 17, 2019, at a meeting, the Director of Human Services explained that the wish list for the senior center was developed based not only on member input, but also on best practices recommended by the National Institute of Senior Centers. Is this what the architect is using, and how is he using it for this current building? Why is there not a showing why some of the space, like the patio and amphitheater, cannot be used for needed space instead of encroaching on what can be used for buffers? These areas look out into a parking lot. The building footprint continues to be challenging to this tight site. There continues to be challenges for the need to have robust buffers for the neighbors, at the same time providing driveways for access to and from the site. Number 4, why haven't our traffic concerns related to the report been fully addressed? There were 2 examples that the traffic report used, Woodbridge JCC and Town of Branford Community Center. Woodbridge JCC is on a hill without abutting neighborhoods and with a traffic signal. As stated before, the Town of Branford Community Center is situated in a different setting than the one in Trumbull. I would encourage anyone using the Branford Community Center or any other center as a basis for this project to visit that location and compare it to the 5958 Main Street site. Why aren't there traffic models done for the actual streets, traffic controls, and conditions that exist and will be needed for this center? These include side streets in Long Hill Village. Is a crosswalk needed across Main Street? If so, how will this affect traffic? How will more use of the crosswalk at Churchill Road and Main Street affect traffic? Will the turn-only lane on Main Street used for Long Hill Village and Churchill Road be sufficient? Where will there be backup of traffic? The last item, number 5, has the town received all permissions needed to install sidewalks on public property extending along Main Street? Before going on to the next step, the town should confirm that they have all the permissions to install sidewalks on public property for access to this site. Also, the plans should show where these sidewalks are. So should, if a crosswalk required, do the same. In conclusion, these are important questions that we all should be concerned with, so we know what we are buying and that the building, size, and operation fit in the character of our suburban life and neighborhoods. Thank you. And I have
Thank
a
you.
short statement.
Thank you, Ms. Silverstone. We'll make sure that the building committee gets your remarks.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I have a very, very short from my neighbor statement.
Why don't you, if you would,
I let other people.
sorry, if you would give your neighbor's name and address, and
Oh.
and we'll take the document and put it in our minutes, okay?
Okay, so I shouldn't read it, I just should state their name.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. Terrence and Christina Holbrook, Fort Cider Mill Lane, Trumbull, Connecticut.
Okay, I have them on the list here as well, but they only have a written statement.
They have one, yes.
Okay. Why don't you hand it up to us?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Our next speaker is Amanda Harmon.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Harmon. I am a resident of Walker Road, 14 Walker Road. I grew up in Trumbull. Moved back here with my family. Part of the reason is because of the wonderful experience growing up here. I grew up on the Daniels Farm side of town, which had at that time quite a bit less traffic than one would find on Walker Road. As a resident of Walker Road, which is directly across the street from the Grace Church property, we continue to support the reasonable development of a senior center, not community center, senior center, similar in size, function, and hours of use of our current senior center. There are several serious open issues and safety concerns that we, the residents, have before the council votes on this. I'm afraid to walk on my street with my kids already, as it is. Cars are whipping down. The first day of school, I had to call and complain about a local company whose truck was flying up the road as I was putting my kindergartner on a bus. Every time we walk to some of the events at Town Hall, I hold my breath, waiting for one of the cars to jump a curb. People are speeding. I've made multiple requests to the police. It hasn't worked. We've had cars who've plowed into parked cars on our streets. We've even had a resident that was hit by a car, speed bumps put in and then removed. Adding this traffic to our neighborhood without having appropriate traffic studies done is of great concern. We have concerns about access, walking with our family from our homes. The current plan calls for no crosswalks at the community center site. This is short-sighted and will need the state of Connecticut approval for a crosswalk or signalized light. It is our understanding that this plan recommends we walk from our road down to the intersection of Main Street and Churchill, cross over there, which is already difficult as it is, then walk down to a community center and then do that return trip. I would encourage you all to take some time driving on Main Street by Walker Road. You can see people as it is already darting across Main Street. No one's walking down and using that. And now we're going to add additional people to that. It creates a serious safety concern and will likely result in people attempting to continue to cross and increase crossing Main Street from the Walker and Sterling Road neighborhoods. Should a motion be made this evening to vote to move the Grace Church property site approval forward, we, the neighbors, request the town council delay voting until the state of Connecticut Traffic Control agrees to approve a crosswalk or signalized crossing and does a thorough traffic study that includes the side streets that's its impact. Please keep this preliminary plan with the Community Facilities Building Committee until these important safety issues have been resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holbrook. Just in case there's any uncertainty, we have no resolution on our agenda tonight to approve any aspect of the proposed community center. Our next speaker, I can't read your last name. It's Raymond from Norwood Terrace.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Trumbull Town Council. My name is Raymond LeVar. I live over at 14 Norwood Terrace, Trumbull, Connecticut. I do not think the senior center is appropriate at this time due to the town finances. I strongly do not recommend the build because of all the other town projects in line. I do think, however, we have high priorities, fire, EMS, police, schools, etc. I think this should be tabled for a later date in time. The budget should be reviewed before going forward. And I strongly think taking any city bonds and financing, etc., for this project should be taken with great caution. I do, however, think this is a great idea, could work in the future, but not at this time. Thank you. Your constituent, Raymond LeVar.
Thank you, Mr. LeVar. Next speaker, I believe, is Tom Broderick.
It's bad handwriting. Apologies.
Hi, good evening. Thomas Broderick, Wolseley Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this public comment. This is in regards to the Senior Community Center, and I would urge you to support it and eventually bring it to a referendum vote for the town. The people should have their say in that. I moved to Trumbull 5 years ago, and it's a beautiful town with a wonderful quality of life, but it's also a collection of homes in search of a place. Trumbull lacks what you can call third places. They're places that you can walk to, meet neighbors, and form bonds with your fellow citizens. And I think the proposed Main Street location is perfect for that. It's near our existing town hall. It's near our existing library. That's kind of the municipal heart of our community. And I would agree with the previous statement. It absolutely should be safe to walk there. There's so many things we can do that, but don't ban it. Make it safe to walk there. It can be hard for people who support this project to come out. I understand the neighbors are opposed to it, so I do want to be here and say, I think this is one of those projects that's good for the whole town. And it's possible to mitigate the issues for the neighbors. I understand their issues, but it is possible to mitigate those. And I just want to close, because you have so many comments, I'm going to cut half of this off. But I want to close by saying, the community benefits to this project are the community building. This is going to be a place where seniors, Trumbull's kids, residents, whomever it may be, they can gather, build, and strengthen those bonds that make our town wonderful. I think it's going to be a great asset for the town. So eventually, when the time comes, I urge you to put it to referendum. Thank you for your time, and hopefully it's not that late an evening for you all.
Thank you, Mr. Broderick. Our next speaker is John Spielman.
Good evening to the Town of Trumbull Town Council. My name is John Spielman. I live at 26 Jerome Avenue. Tonight I come to you as a concerned resident of not only the town I grew up in, but the town I reside in. I'm sure many of you are aware of the negative changes Ms. Tesoro's administration is bringing to fruition. I'm here to make my concerns known. As a town, we do not have the budget to put tens of millions of dollars into a community center. Our taxes are high enough as is. We do not need all these sky-high apartments. It's just industrializing the town. A negative factor to this is more kids in the school system. The school system's already packed enough, and these children's families will unfortunately contribute little tax revenue. This feeds into the issue of our town roads. Our town roads are extremely clogged. Our town, in my eyes, has always had that small town charm to it. Little by little, we are losing that small town charm Trumbull has always had. We do not need to make our small town into a large city. We do not want an excess amount of people moving in to crowd the town. Roads and schools. We do not need a community center that we cannot afford just yet. We do not need 5-story apartment buildings taking away our small town charm. We do not need a mass move flood of our town. Of course, we want more people to move to the town of Trumbull, but we have to do it properly. We have major improvements to our infrastructure. We have hundreds of millions of dollars to plans to redo our sewers. We just passed a new $142 million school in the district plan. All schools will soon need hundreds of millions of dollars worth of improvements. 20 to 30 million on a senior center is just not in the budget. I highly rethink your overall plan for our small town.
Thank you, Mr. Spielman. Our next speaker is Anthony Grabowski.
Anthony Grabowski, 12 Piner Street. I'm here to address the community center being put in. I just wanted to advise you that the next time you travel on Route 111, to pay close attention to views. The Grace Church property, with the beautiful canopy of heritage trees up front, is one of the prettiest views in the 4 miles between 15 and 25. All of those and many other trees on that property are designated to be removed. We have been watching these trees closely since the tree warden / director of Parks and Rec deemed them unworthy of being saved. Not one single branch came down from these trees in the recent ice storm in 4+ days of 60-mile-an-hour winds. The trees seem to be healthy. Certainly, they are worthy of an inspection and evaluation by an independent arborist before any are taken down. In my own opinion, I feel that it is not necessary to have a community center. I think that is just a waste of time, money, and resources, just for God knows how many people will even go there. Also, as a high school student, I know that traffic will build up worse than it already is. You have a mile of traffic behind the school buses themselves, and most likely more to come with the city buses and other people coming to the center. I hope you think about what others and I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grabowski. Thank you. Next speaker is Jerry Gregory.
Good evening, everyone. Jerry Gregory, 45 Plymouth Avenue, around the corner from St. Teresa's. Hearing some comments tonight, I'd like to open with, we have a lot of seniors in this town who have paid taxes for a lot of years. Our senior center over at Priscilla Place, I wouldn't say it's an embarrassment, but we can do better. And when we have investments in, as we said, roads, and schools, and other public buildings, I'd like to see something done for the seniors. And I think there's a lot of people here that would support that. But I'm really here to protect the sides of the pickleball courts. And I represent the pickleball contingent. We have a lot of members here tonight who support this. And to my knowledge, the size of the gymnasium, in broad sense, will support 3 pickleball courts of proper size. But the current architect's drawing does not have the proper size. So I'm recommending that they go back and redo it. The space is adequate, but put in the proper size. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Our next speaker, Elizabeth, is it Wheeler? Wecker. I knew I was wrong.
Good evening, Elizabeth Wecker, 16 Edgewood Avenue. Excuse me. As direct abutters of the Grace Church property, we have supported the town's purchase of the property to protect it from private development. We continue to support the reasonable development of a senior center similar in size, function, and hours of use as our current senior center. There are several serious issues and safety concerns that we, the residents, have prior to the town council voting on this site selection approval. First, I asked the town council to request the architect draft a design specific to the 6.04 acre Grace Church parcel instead of attempting to modify the 26 acre Hardy Lane proposal. Developing a design that would allow for the flow of traffic on both sides of the building rather than solely on the Edgewood side would lessen the impact on the neighbors as well as increasing safety and lessening congestion when entering and exiting onto Main Street in comparison to the two-way entrance-exit now proposed. A smaller, narrower design of the building would fit more seamlessly into the neighborhood, allowing buffers to increase for the neighbors, as well as continuing to serve the senior community with a new building similar in size to the current one, but greater in function due to better design and usage of space. The question of blasting remains. In the current plan, a considerable change in the topography of the land is proposed, lowering the site by a minimum of 8 to 14 feet, directly abutting the Edgewood neighbors, and to even a greater depth closer to the rear entrance of the proposed building. This is a serious concern for the structural safety of our homes and properties and is yet to be addressed. What will the long-term effects of these changes be, and how will property values be affected with the addition of a now proposed 30,000 square foot municipal building next door? These are just two issues that have been brought up numerous times and still haven't been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weaker. Our next speaker is Brian Walsh.
Brian Walsh, 5944 Main Street. Good evening, council members. I have harshly spoken out against this project since it was announced in August. Since I am a direct abutter with a vested interest in the project, I come off biased. This isn't the case. I would love stability built next door, so I know what will be there for as long as I own my house. I understand something will be built there, and it should, because this is an excellent location for town infrastructure. The problem plaguing me is the scale of the building required for the senior center is too large to fit unobtrusively on this property. I have been to the senior center to witness firsthand what they are facing, which is bleak. The building is poorly designed, outdated, and the seniors deserve better. I fear that the town has just grown tired of dealing with the subject and the arguments from neighbors of each property that they have chosen along the way. If we as taxpayers are going to invest upwards of $30 million in a facility, let's not rush into it. I know this has dragged on for 10 years, maybe more, but the Grace property has been considered since August. It was proposed 6 months ago, and we are already trying to get shovels in the ground. Over a decade, the town, I apologize. I'm sorry. Over a decade, the town situation has changed. We are building Hillcrest, and we have other schools that will need to renovate or build. We have sewer issues that will cost the taxpayers, other infrastructure projects like the town fuel pumps or a new building for EMS, which are going to have to expand if we continue to build houses at the rate the town is trying to. The town desperately needs a swimming pool and basketball courts, as highlighted by the Parks and Rec Director's exuberance to use the senior center's court. The town is at a crossroads. We have mounting infrastructure projects looming, including this one. It is best for the town to put a hold on this project and reframe the mission of the Facilities Building Committee to source a site in town that could accommodate a true senior center, community center, with a pool similar to Newtown. We just had a study of the mall revitalization. Could we find property there to build this center? I understand that it will cost more and increase taxes even more, but I would rather make a wise decision on building that will indeed be an asset to the town, rather than shoehorning a rushed concept up on a property that can't support it. I implore you, the town council, to have more than a quick vote tonight to truly appreciate the town's best interest. I ask, on behalf of the neighbors surrounding Grace Church and the residents of Trumbull, this council delay approval of proposed senior community center. You are responsible for doing what you think is best for the town and the residents. I trust that you'll do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Laurel Walsh, welcome.
Hello. Laurel Walsh, 5944 Main Street. Council members, on behalf of the neighbors surrounding Grace Church, I respectfully urge this council to delay approval of the proposed senior community center. There remain too many unanswered questions regarding this project, and the scale of the proposed building is deeply concerning for the surrounding residents. Our primary concerns include size and impact on the neighborhood. The structure's large footprint significantly impacts nearby homes, creating a sense of overcrowding and diminishing the character of our neighborhood. Blasting and earth removal. The extensive blasting and substantial earth removal required for construction pose serious risks to the stability of our homes and our overall safety. We need clear assurances regarding mitigation measures and potential damage assessments before proceeding. Usage regulations. We respectfully request that the council establish a formal resolution outlining usage parameters before granting approval. This should include defined operating hours and curfews, clear limits on participation volume to prevent excessive traffic and noise, guidelines of permissible activities to ensure the facility remains aligned with the community expectations. Codifying these concerns before approval is paramount to maintaining transparency and ensuring that this project balances the needs of both the broader community and the impacted neighborhood. We encourage the council to prioritize these discussions and address our concerns before making a final decision. We appreciate your time and attention to this matter and look forward to a productive dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Thanks so much. Next to speak is Sherry Boyd.
I probably don't need this, but I'll use it. Good evening. Sherry Boyd, 16 Pinehurst Street. I chose to raise a family in Trumbull for the schools, the parks, the open spaces, and overall beauty, which is being aggressively whittled away. I've lived in Trumbull for 33 years and have consistently supported town leadership until now. We appreciate the town's purchase of the Grace property, and we support the development of a senior center. We ask members of the town council to require the committee to resolve the size, safety, and environmental concerns prior to any voting on this site selection. The current 20,000 square foot senior center was originally a school, and most of the space is smaller former classrooms and offices, which makes it inefficient as a senior center. The current gymnasium is only big enough for one pickleball court. A gym with 3 pickleball courts is 3,900 square feet minimum. That gym in a 20,000 square foot building would leave 16,100 square feet for all the rest. The current building proposal has components that are not necessary for a senior center that can and should be eliminated. Please recommend to the committee that they scale down the building size. Beyond the size, the proposed building in its current orientation placed south to north. All right, I got to start over. Beyond the size, the proposed building in its current orientation placed south to north lengthwise does not fit on the property. Removing the glorious Grace Church canopy and replacing it with this long storefront is a step in the wrong direction. In addition to the aesthetics, a smaller building reoriented east to west lengthwise is preferable from a safety perspective, as it will allow for cars and emergency vehicles to pass on either side, which in an emergency can be critical. The reorientation will also require less blasting and minimize the need for steep retention walls, which, as proposed, will likely cut into the roots of the northerly historic trees. Trumbull needs a new senior center, and what has been put forward today is beyond what the seniors need and does not meet the overall needs of what Trumbull seeks in a community and aquatics center anyways. With Hillcrest on the horizon and the majority of the Trumbull schools needing some updating, doesn't it make sense to build a dedicated senior center not so deeply buried in the land for significantly less money and a full community center elsewhere at some point? Please delay voting until the size of the building as well as other open issues have been addressed. Keep this preliminary plan with the Community Facilities Building Committee until these important issues have been resolved. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ms. Boyd. Our next speaker is Sandra Fancook.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Fancook, and I'm at 22 Edgewood. From day one, the neighbors around the Grace Church property have overwhelmingly supported the town's purchase of the Grace property to protect it from private development. We continue to support the reasonable development of a senior center similar in size, function, and hours of use as our current senior center. Prior to the town council voting to approve this site selection, there are several serious open issues and safety concerns that we residents have. There is ledge in this neighborhood. Has a geological assessment been completed to determine whether the amount of excavation, blasting, and jackhammering will be required? If not, why not? We have serious concerns about potential damage to our homes that have plaster walls, the foundations, and the survivability of our budding trees whose roots will be damaged during demolition and construction, both short-term and long-term. We, the neighbors, request the town council delay voting until the details of the geological assessment, as well as the other issues you are hearing this evening, have been properly addressed. Please keep this preliminary plan with the building committee until these important issues have been resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fancook. Our next speaker is Dawn Roy.
Good evening. Dawn Roy, 20 Edgewood Avenue. As neighbors to and direct abutters with the Grace Church property, we have consistently supported the town's purchase to protect it from private development. You've heard this over and over tonight. We continue to support the reasonable development of a logically sized senior center with appropriate hours of operation. There are several serious open issues and safety concerns that we, the residents, have prior to the town council voting on this. Our greatest concerns are regarding the defining hours of operation for the facility, particularly the community center aspect. It is not helpful to continue to state that these are just ideas and concepts on the part of those making the decisions, when it has also been communicated numerous times that the building, if there, will be utilized 7 days a week, 8 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. It is unacceptable to create something of this nature and disregard what this will do to our physical and mental well-being. As it has been said before, there will never be any downtime, quiet or respite in our backyard if this building is to be utilized every single day. We are concerned about a geological assessment being completed to determine blasting or the amount of excavation that will be required. We're concerned about potential damage to our homes, and mostly the hazardous fallout from the demolition. How will the town or the building committee ensure our health and safety? How will the health of our pets be protected? With the extreme proximity of the demolition to our homes and yards, there is no barrier to protect us when this demolition begins, either short or long term. If we get sick from the fallout, what will our recourse be? In closing, please do not vote to approve this site tonight and keep this proposal open with the Community Facilities Building Committee until the details of the building hours of use, curfews are in place, as well as this geological assessment. It is my family and that of my neighbors that will pay the price, and it will not be a positive one if these concerns are not adequately addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. Chris Pettinella is next.
Good evening, members of the, Chris Pettinella, 69 Churchill Road. Good evening to the members of the town council, a lot of my constituents behind me, and other elected officials in the room. I come before you tonight, once again, not to reject the idea of community development. Nobody's against it, but to urge caution, responsibility, and transparency regarding the proposed community center in Trumbull. Yeah, you have to ask yourselves, is this the right decision for the town? And will this truly serve the best interests of our residents, both financially and socially? First and foremost, the cost of the project is staggering, an estimated $25 million. This is not an abstract number. It represents higher taxes for Trumbull families, many of whom are already struggling with rising costs of living. According to municipal budget reports, our town's finances are stretched thin, and adding such a massive expense could force difficult trade-offs in essential services like schools, road maintenance, and emergency response. Additionally, seen in similar projects in Connecticut, the final price tag is often significantly higher than the initial estimate due to unforeseen costs, delays, inflation. Is this a risk we're willing to take, and should we gamble with taxpayer dollars without a clear plan for financial sustainability? Increased traffic is a serious concern many of us have. A study by the Connecticut Department of Transportation found that large community facilities lead to 30% increase in local traffic, resulting in congestion, safety hazards for pedestrians, and increased vehicle emissions. The idea and blatant lie that this center will cause no increase in traffic is preposterous. A 2018 study from the National Safety Council found that higher traffic volumes near community spaces resulted in significant uptick in pedestrian accidents. And as many of us know, unfortunately, just a few months ago, an elderly woman was fatally struck less than 1,000 feet away from the proposed center on the Churchill and Main Street intersection where the crosswalk for this building would be. Do we really want to invite that level of disruption into our town? I think we need an independent traffic study. We're still awaiting environmental study, by the way. I propose all of you to get in contact with your districts and your constituents and be transparent with them about the building plans. Educate every single resident, especially the unaware neighbors, about the impacts of this community center. Tell them about the environmental factors. Tell them about the traffic impact, and tell them about the expected costs that will soon turn Trumbull from the top 20% most affordable towns in Connecticut to the top 5, especially when a $200 million sewer repair comes around. The district plans to renovate almost all of our schools on top of a $25 million community center. Not feasible. A report from the Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government found that community projects rushed through without adequate public input and long-term financial plans often lead to wasted resources and facilities that fail to meet community needs. We cannot afford to make this mistake. If the goal is to create more recreational opportunities, we should focus on targeted, lower-cost improvements that don't require massive construction or disrupt residential neighborhoods. We must be responsible stewards of our town's resources. We must ensure that any major development truly benefits our residents, is financially stable, and has strong community support. Right now, the proposed community center meets none of that criteria. Vote like a taxpayer, vote like a neighbor, and vote like a citizen, and vote like a public servant. You're supposed to represent the people who put their faith in you to serve. Come November, Trumbull's not going to forget who swept their thoughts under the rug. I urge the town council to reconsider the project, engage in deeper dialogue with residents, and explore more fiscally responsible and community-supported alternatives. Let's make decisions that protect the character, financial health, and well-being of Trumbull for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patnella. Our next speaker is Patricia Pifko.
Good evening. Patricia Pifko. I live at 158 Plymouth Avenue. I have lived in Trumbull my entire life, and I know that a community center is long overdue in Trumbull, and I know that a senior center is long overdue in Trumbull, and seems to be a great opportunity for us to combine those two and in the long run save a lot of money. It doesn't seem right to me to build two separate entities. Why would we build a separate senior center? It's no longer the model being used in many communities. They are being built as one community center that serves everyone. We don't have a children's library. What we have is space for children in our community library. We, with a community center, could do the same thing for the seniors and put everything they need in the same facility. To build two separate ones creates a lot of extra expense. And yes, we do need to replace our schools and put a lot of money into them as well. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything for the rest of the town and all of us who don't use the school systems. But if we can save some money, we should look to do that in the long run. I will not pretend I know all the details and the ins and outs of all the studies that need to be done to what piece of property is most efficient for such a center, but I really think Trumbull needs one cohesive center to serve everybody. I, as a senior, don't want to be ostracized into some building separate from the rest of the community. I would rather be included in that same community space. So I would urge that although we should respect the needs of the people that live in that area and do all our due diligence to make sure what we build is safe, that we consider building, wherever it has to be, one major piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pifko. Our next speaker is Liz Jones.
Good evening, council members. I am Liz Jones. I live at 9 Pinehurst Street, Trumbull, Connecticut. 2 or 3 months ago, the abutting neighbors asked the architects to please provide us with elevation views from various neighbors' yards. We've yet to see anything like that. These are our homes. We deserve to see what we're going to be looking at. This is, for probably everybody in this room, our homes are our greatest asset. Comparing the height of the existing structure versus the height of the planned structure is irrelevant when the proposed building now is 5 times the former church's footprint. What is relevant is the change in the views. What can be seen from the surrounding properties has to do with the orientation, the footprint, and how close the building comes to the very edge of our properties. And this one is very, very close. If you were in a butter, wouldn't you demand to see this? If this was your home and your life investment, wouldn't you demand to see this? What are we waiting for? It's been months that we've been coming to these meetings. At our last meeting, You reviewed data from a traffic study. The study was conducted by a firm that the town has on retainer. I think a lot of us that attended that meeting would have liked to have seen a study done by a firm that wasn't on retainer, that had no skin in the game. The architects compared the structures, compared this structure to a structure in Wilton and Branford, and tried to connect the commonality between our project and the Wilton and the Branford projects. Not one person, not the traffic person, not the architects, none of them talked about the population of those towns. When you look at this through that lens, it's very obvious that this is not a great location for this facility. Trumbull has 18,324 more residents than Wilton, and 8,554 more residents than Branford. So how you can come up here and say this is an apples to apples kind of comparison is ridiculous. And I'm embarrassed that we did that. I'm just going to remind everybody again, the abutting neighborhoods are very pro-senior center. We really are. We want you to have your senior center. We want you to have pickleball. We like pickleball too. But a busy, loud, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week community center, this is not the correct location for that. I also want to point out that we are now facing tariffs. We're now going to be facing tariffs. So what is the cost of this project going to turn into? Because we get most of our lumber from Canada. So I'd like you to think about that too. And in my close, again, I'm just going to say that our residents are in favor of a senior center. We are not in favor of a 7-day-a-week community center. And if this was your neighborhood and your backyard, you'd be up here doing the same thing I'm doing. And I just want to remind everybody of two things. I don't know if any residents from Priscilla Place are here saying, hey, go ahead, go for it. Can't wait for you to have the community center in your backyard. Anybody here from Priscilla? Didn't think so. And my last statement is, I got to tell you the way this whole process has gone, where we're not allowed to ask questions, we're only allowed to make statements. I feel like our neighborhood is like Ukraine. It's like, hey, you're just going to do what you're told to do, and that's it. These are our homes. This is what we've worked hard for our entire lives. My husband is a naval veteran. He killed himself for us to own a property that we bought the property, we paid off the property. And now I'm going to be faced with whether or not my property is going to drop in value by 15%. So again, I want you all to have your pickleball courts, but these are our homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Next, we have Brittany Jones.
Yep, different Jones. Hello, Brittany Jones, 5976 Main Street, which is the old Hawley Memorial Library, the direct north abutter to the proposed property. So again, thank you to the town for buying the property to protect it from private development. As an abutter that shares a 170-foot property line to the north, mere feet away from the proposed 3-lane roadway and front parking lot that would be built to access the center as proposed, I share many of the same concerns as my neighbors, as well as a few unique ones. Overall, I ask the town council to please press pause before voting on this project to move forward at this site and ensure the following concerns are adequately addressed. My first concern is the size and use. I won't belabor this as I share a lot of the same concerns, but again, the proposed roadway will be right next to my house, and there's no proposed buffer for the front neighbors. The excessive noise and light as proposed will be shining right into my front window, so would like to get that sorted. Same concerns about after-hours use. Even though, we can make decisions about the use now, how is that going to, be promised for years in the future? Same concerns about impacts of construction and the heavy blasting that's going to be required to dig into the rock. How is that going to damage the trees, the foundations of our buildings? Is there going to be increased cost and environmental impact of having to dig into this rock, and how is that going to be assessed? The proposed roadway, again, is going to run right up against a row of very large old trees. And if once that's dug, I can guarantee you're going to hit a root of some sort. So again, how is that going to be assessed? And how are we going to ensure that those trees, which are, critical to the aesthetics of our neighborhood and the enjoyment of the shade of our backyard, and to be honest, helps my AC bill in the summer, how are we going to ensure that those are not, taken down? Because again, these are hundreds of foot tall trees that are irreplaceable. Considering the aesthetics of the building, has the design been considered? The color, style, how is this going to fit into the neighborhood? Is it going to stand the test of time as styles change? The building committee has advised in the February meeting that these issues are among the details that will be worked out in time. However, I believe that these details are critical for the town council and our community to visualize up front in order to make an informed decision. My second concern is the accuracy of the maps and studies that have been presented. The maps that have been presented by the architect are different, even between drawings of itself. If you look at the February presentation, and I have some appendices here in my notes, which I'll hand in, and I also emailed beforehand, there's inconsistencies just within the slides in regard to my property line. So I won't belabor that here, but again, I want to have those questions answered, and who should I talk to? And I'm also concerned if these property lines and tree lines are that far off in the plans, what else is off? Again, we're talking about buffer as small as 25 feet to some neighbors sometimes. That seems like a lot, but that's really small when you're talking about a building this large. So it becomes critical to ensure the accuracy of the plans so we're all looking and understanding the same thing. I also echo the concerns about the traffic study being accurate. There was an interesting comment raised in the February building committee meeting about the growth rate used in the traffic study not being in line with the growth rate assumed for the educational assessments. So I don't recall off the top of my head, but it was something to maybe the factor of 2 or 3. So if a lower growth rate was used, are we really getting an accurate study? At minimum, I feel it should be at least be in line with the rates assumed for the educational assessments. And I also question if it should be higher due to all of the commercial development in that corridor. I also have a concern, my third concern, about the long-term community needs. Again, kind of getting at the idea of, is the vision of a dual-use senior and community center really what we need now and in the future? I encourage the town council to reconsider the plan and what is needed long-term considering the significant investment. This building is more than sufficient for a senior center, which is the immediate need, but if our town needs a community center, is this building really going to check all the boxes for a long-term community need? For instance, is there room for a swimming pool or expanded gym space? Is another community center going to need to be built in the future anyways at a higher cost? Is this facility going to need to be expanded and then eventually threaten our properties with eminent domain because you decided that you shoehorned this into too small of an area and now you need to expand? If a dual-use facility is deemed appropriate, which I do agree that it could make sense to put those together, I strongly urge you to consider other sites that are large enough to satisfy both the current and future community and senior needs with the potential to expand without shoehorning into a residential neighborhood to help ensure a long-term durable solution. I'll skip ahead for this consideration of time, but I please do ask that you please read this in full. And again, I think I did send it around via email. And my other main concern number 4, and finally, is the lack of clarity on key steps and milestones. It's unclear what the steps are in the process, and I believe transparency here is crucial. It would be ideal to see a publicly available project schedule with key milestones and timelines clearly outlined and kept up to date by the building committee. For instance, is an environmental impact study ever going to be done? What are the key milestones, approval steps that need to be done before the ground breaks? At what steps in the process will neighbors be informed and/or consulted? The neighbors, the public, and the town council all deserve answers to these critical questions before decisions are proceeded to be made. Therefore, I please ask you to press pause on any further approvals and help us in gathering these answers so that the most informed decision in the best interest of all can be made. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Nate Gross.
Hi, my name is Nate Gross. I live on Canterbury Lane. I'm here in support of the Senior and Community Center. I've lived in Trumbull for my entire life. I love this town, and I hope to stay here for my entire life. One of the biggest issues I've noticed, though, is our lack of community spaces for activities. We need a senior and community center to finally provide a place where residents of all generations can come together, where we can have a place for community activities and more ample group meeting space that our town sorely lacks. We need a community center. That is a simple reality. I'd also like to address some of the factual misconceptions about the senior community center. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay, it seems like something happened in my notes. I believe that this project can go forward while addressing the concerns of the community. I know there's a lot of people here in opposition to the project. Unfortunately, more often than not, do people come out in opposition to proposals, but rarely in support of them. Even when supporters are in the majority, there may be a vocal minority here against the project, but they are just that, minority. Put this project to referendum and let the community decide. Is there somewhere that I can send my notes on email?
Council clerk at trumbull-ct.gov.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. Nancy Gardner.
Good evening, Nancy Gardner, 34 Parkwood Road. My husband and I, senior citizens, have lived in Trumbull for 32 years. We are taxpayers. We're neighbors to all of you, though we live on the Daniels Farm side of town. I do understand what it's like to live in an area with community buildings that are open many hours a day, since we live near Daniels Farm School, Trumbull High School, and Hillcrest Middle School. And we did not realize when we bought our house 32 years ago that we would be serenaded by the Trumbull High School marching band every morning. But we are, and we live with that, because that's part of being part of the community. And Trumbull High School and Trumbull High School marching band is an important part of the community. Daniels Farm changed a lot of different ways. Daniels Farm Road, since we moved here, there were 2 farms on the road when we moved in. One of those farms is now a housing development, and the other is a very thriving business, and we love Plasko's, but it has totally changed the traffic situation, and we live with that because we live in a town that is thriving and growing and changing. Our street was a dead end when we moved in. We lived next to a wooded area that we were told when we moved in was Greenbelt and would never be built upon. Except that was wrong. It was right in our listing, and now is a new street. And instead of having a dead end for our kids to ride their bikes on, it is now a thoroughfare for very uncaffeinated in the morning and caffeinated teenagers in the afternoon to use as a highway back road to avoid Daniels Farm Road going to Trumbull High School. And so lots of changes, but we understand that Trumbull grows, things change. But I am here actually in favor of the senior center and the community center for the reason that I think it's going to be a great asset to the community. My kids have not been in the school since 2007, but I voted in favor of Hillcrest renovation because I believe that we need to keep updating the town. I think it's good for our property values. But I also think the community center and the senior center is really important because we have in this country right now a real psychological mental health crisis in terms of social isolation. Communities need more places for people to come together. Especially important for senior citizens to be able to get out of their homes, out with other people, be doing things that are active because it's a mental health crisis. It's actually a comorbidity. One of the biggest reasons for dementia and Alzheimer's is social isolation. So I think those of us who have paid taxes for a lot of years, supported our schools, I think, somebody here talked about the essential services that we need to be paying for, but didn't mention the fact that the needs of senior citizens are an essential service. So I'm here voting in favor of the senior center. And I do think it should be seniors and community members because I think having both groups there, they will help each other to have a better quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Kelly Carlin.
Kelly Carlin, 193 Sterling Road. I spoke last town council about my concerns of safety while turning left onto Walker Road. Tonight I want to underscore the impact of a senior center that does not have or might not have sidewalks and crosswalks. After my last comment, I was extremely remiss that I did not share my sadness at the loss of life of an elderly woman at the intersection of Churchill and Main Street. Think about how many more residents will be traveling by foot to this location, given the possible activities that would be afforded by a combination senior center and community center. For example, for the past 3 years, I've attended the weekly summer sing-along put on by the Trumbull Parks and Recreation. The first summer I attended in 2022, there was no park ranger, and young families disregarded rules to park at the library parking lot and walk across. Families, parents included, dangerously crossed. Luckily, no one was hurt, and I was relieved a park ranger was added the year after, in 2023. Will that occur here for possible late night activities when parking at this already too small parcel is overflowing? People will likely be parking on these surrounding streets to the consternation of more residents on streets like Clark Road. Will young kids and teens abide by the rules of a crosswalk that is inconveniently located at Churchill and Main? Already the area is saturated with kids and teens who bike to the gas station at the corner of Main Street and Churchill Road. Finally, I recently read about how much land has already been developed in town, and we are now needing to focus on redeveloping the land we already have for different use. I recognize and appreciate the land will not be used for commercial or housing by a private developer. Again, the surrounding residents are in support of the senior center. Yet the wider community is now growing interested in this project, but their interests at this point in the project have centered on ideas like, why isn't there a pool included in the plans? We need a pool. I ask that you continue to not only consider the concerns of the surrounding neighbors, but the looming disappointment that has already started to creep in from town residents simply over the absence of a pool. It's unfortunate that the needs of the seniors has been overshadowed here. I know no plan will satisfy everyone, but I know a good plan will value patience, collaboration, communication, the possibility that there are other remedies that need to be considered, such as the Trumbull Mall space and its target audience that it hopes to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlin. I know Mark McKeel is here. He has previously emailed the council members his remarks. I have them here, and at your request, we're putting them into the record. I've exhausted the sign-up sheet. Is there anybody else who would like to speak this evening? Come forward, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ariel Heyman. I live on Johnson Street. I wanted to speak in support of the proposed senior community center. I'm a current resident of Trumbull and I have been for 30 years, my whole life. I work as a medical scribe in Middletown, and the healthiest people I see at my job are ones that remain active, and I think the senior center gives them a chance to do that. I hear them talk all the time about how they love pickleball, honestly, and I first learned about it at my job. I also agree that like a combined senior center, it gives like the opportunity for friendships, like intergenerational friendships develop. That's something I experienced when working at the, or volunteering at the Beardsley Zoo. That was valuable to me. So I think that's something everyone could benefit from. I think indefinitely delaying it does a disservice to our town's current seniors. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Harmon. That's the last call. Sir.
My name is George Saris. My wife and I have lived in Trumbull since 1993. a long time ago. And just wanted to say that
Before you speak, give us your address, okay?
601 White Plains Road in Trumbull. So I'm not an abutter of the property. Actually, I've just been really impressed with the people that have spoken so far. I've just been very encouraged that we have this system in our country and in our state and in our town where people can actually say what they really feel. It was very encouraging to hear all of that. The concern that I have, I was looking, I got a tax bill. My taxes have gone up $2,000 in the last few years. A year. That's a lot of money. I'm thinking with all of the expenses that we are dishing out, that is my biggest concern. Why don't we have some kind of system within our town to go through and really find out what is necessary to expend our finances on and what is not? I'm not sure about the senior center. I'm 76 years old. I would probably be a perfect candidate to go to a senior center. I'm a member of the community, so I'd be a perfect candidate to go to a community center. But I am very concerned about the cost that just goes on and on and on to the taxpayers in this town. I don't want to have to look at my tax bill every year and see it go up a few $100s. It just shocks me every time I see that. So anyway, I'm not really saying too much except that please be very concerned about the expenditures that we vote for this town. You can't just keep on saying, well, we have a need for this, so let's borrow more money. At some point, you have to pay the piper. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Saris. With that, I think we're done with our public comment. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, offering your comments and your suggestions. We certainly will review all of it. We'll dialogue with our building committee and try to get as many answers and get as close to perfection as humanly possible. So with perhaps some of the answers, I'll call upon our chairman of our building committee, Lori Hayes O'Brien, to give us an update. Most of you know her last update was in January. She'll answer some of the questions that lingered from that meeting and ask her where she got her scooter.
I'll tell you that I did not get this injury because of this project. I just want to make that clear.
Well, good evening and welcome.
Hello, everybody. Lori Hayes O'Brien, Chairman of the Community Facilities Building Committee. We're going to hear tonight to give you an update, as your chairman just said. Also with us tonight on Zoom are our architects, Tom Arcari and Rocco Petito. In conversations with Mr. Massaro, he thought it would be best that we just try to go through an update, perhaps answer some of the questions, and have them come back to you in April with a full presentation. I will say, I'll try to answer some of the questions that came up. I was jotting down things, but I'll go through my update first. But a lot of this information can also be found in all of our meeting minutes, so I'd ask you to look at those as well. So let me get through these. First, I want to thank, before I forget, the building committee. I know a lot of members are here. They may not want to stand up or wave their hands, but they've been very busy and involved with this project, as well as our town council members that are on the committee. So a big thank you to them, and a thank you to our architects who have been here for a very, very, very long time. As you know, since July of 2024, our committee was asked to explore the feasibility of the Grace Church property at 5958 Main Street as a potential site for the Senior Community Center. At our February 12th Community Facilities Building Committee meeting, the committee voted unanimously to accept the current conceptual plans designed by QA&M for the Main Street site. And I just wanted to say with that conceptual plans are that, but what it does is really take the components that we've been looking at for over 10 years now. I actually want to reference that I recently got sent an article about this discussion happening as early as 1981. So I know I wasn't a senior back then, except for in high school, but I think it's important to know that this has been the components, what this building should entail has been discussed for a very long time. So the conceptual plans model just that. They're very similar to the ones we presented to you guys in January. There's been some slight modifications. I believe we emailed you our February presentation along with the traffic study conducted by Italian Bond. I'll say over the last 2 months, there have been several meetings that these presentations have happened at that have had the necessary approvals that you guys will need eventually to make your decision. Those include a meeting with all the related department heads, a meeting with approval from the fire marshal that looked at all the necessary egresses, et cetera, for emergency vehicles, a report and approval of the traffic study from the police commission with an unanimous approval for that, a positive 824 referral from planning and zoning commission. We also, last week, I believe it was just last week, although an approval isn't needed from the Conservation Commission, we did go and meet with them, Dawn, myself, Rocco, and one of the civil engineers from Benesh, I believe is how you pronounce it, to share our plans and get their input. They were had very positive response. They're pleased and would like to provide suggestions as the project moves forward. Finally, the last of our recent meetings, I was invited by the Long Hill Village Association to meet with a group of residents and answer their questions. The first selectman was also invited, as well as Ronnie Morganson, who is our senior center coordinator, attended as well. It was a very positive meeting, and we appreciate their feedback and support. Regarding the design itself, QA&M has continued to make minor changes in response to public comments, the aforementioned meetings, and committee feedback, while staying true to the fundamental components that have been integral to the center since this project started. Some of those adjustments we pointed out at the last update, but some additional modifications since January have included the change in the turn of the driveway to add even more distance from the neighbors, a change in the roof to a well configuration to house some mechanicals, which will reduce noise and improve aesthetics, and the addition of sidewalk, which has been discussed, which was recommended by the traffic study. So much conversation has been had about the size and use of, I'll focus a little bit on the gym recreational area. Currently, that space is about the size of a middle school gym. It can fit 3 pickleball courts, and actually to the pickleball people, they are regulation courts. I know it's hard to tell from the size. I wrote down 44 by 24 plus the safety. Got it. Okay, so that does fit 3 pickleball courts. But as we discussed last time, in response to neighbors' concerned, we took out bleachers, we reduced the height of the gym with the intention of reducing high-volume events. That's been our focus as we've made some of these changes, is to, have the building kind of describe what can happen there, and those have been some of the changes because of that. We believe the current iteration of the space is a compromise that will work well for all. What seems to be an area of concern for the neighbors, and a reasonable one by all means, is usage and hours. We believe we've met our charge of creating and I'll quote our resolution, an up-to-date, useful, and cost-effective space for senior and community center that can meet the needs of our senior population and better serve our community. It's up to the town to use it as they see fit. For those who have expressed their desire for just a senior center, I think it's really important to stress that every component of the current plan would be included, even if this were only a senior center only model, including the size of the gym / recreation area. The building itself would not change if we were really to be creating an up-to-date, cost-effective space. That being said, since the beginning of this project 10 years ago, there have been community needs that have been expressed. I've heard a lot tonight about what some people would like, a full-blown recreation center with a pool. Some people would like this bigger, some people would like this smaller. I think a lot of this is going to be about compromise. We have been through, I believe to date, 24 different locations of where something like this could happen, and we all know how Trumbull's configured. There's not a space for the enormous true community center that people are envisioning, but we think this is a good compromise. We think this will be a really active, wonderful senior center, but it doesn't seem to be cost-effective at 3 o'clock to close the doors. There's other community needs. I think the town has an opportunity and a responsibility to dictate what that looks like. I think what we've tried to do as a committee is to give you a building that gives you those options of what can happen. A couple of the things that were talked about, I already addressed the pickleball. The footprint was not sure where that number came in, but it's reduced from the Hardy Lane. The Hardy Lane was the model that we put in because it's the components we've always looked at. From then, we've just reduced it. It's down to a 17,000 square foot footprint, and actually the full size of the potential building is really, if you add the buildings that are on the space now, it's about equal to that size. The other, I'd like to just talk a little bit about our professionals, including the traffic study. I know people doubt some of the things, and I understand it. I understand that because you don't always understand every component of it, but that's why we hire the right people and turn to them as professionals. I've been trying, and I will continue to defend their professionalism, and that what we get back is what we believe to be true. And I think the committee brings up lots of questions that are answered, have been answered well. I thought the traffic study was done very well. I know people talk about that side streets weren't part of the traffic study, but they were. The whole corridor was looked at. Every count that came in and out of every one of those side streets is part of that traffic study. It's hard to get into the nitty gritty when you're just looking at it on a piece of paper, but those things are why we hire the good guys. I'll just finish up and then open up to some questions. Our next committee meeting is next Wednesday, March 12th. We'll be discussing any feedback we have from you guys and any necessary modifications. Cost estimates are expected to be solidified this week for us to be able to present to the Board of Finance, hopefully at their next meeting, to obtain a bond resolution with any number that they can come up with. And then what we feel like we can do is return to you with every piece of information that you could possibly need to make a informed decision. Obviously, this will go to referendum, and we were happy that it will be. This is ultimately the decision of the people of this town, all the people of this town. I want to stress, I know the neighbors are stressed about that. We have tried to try to listen to their concerns and move this project along to answer a lot of those. Our architects have done an amazing job of coming back every month with some modification and an answer to that. This is not going to be everyone happy with everything. I understand that, and I understand that we're limited. We do believe this is a good site. We're glad it's near the municipal, this area. We think that's important. We think walkability is a factor. We rely on a number of professionals in town and those that we have hired to make some of those bigger decisions about some of the more in-depth questions that people have been asking. But we really feel like this, where we're at now, is a really good, what we've been striving for a long time. I know people are saying hurry. It's kind of ironic to us who have been talking about it for a very long time to say hurry. I know they feel that we've only been looking at this site for a very short time, but this project really hasn't changed in what we've really been trying to do since 2015, at least from my knowledge, and probably before that. So these guys will be happy to jump in if you have really specific questions. I can hopefully answer some of the bigger one, the simpler ones, but we'll take it from there.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Dorsey. Questions?
Hello. Couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
What is the size difference between the current senior center and the one that's proposed?
The current senior center is a little over 20,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Not in good shape. We're all stressing that. I don't think I'm going to have to say that again. We are looking at around 30,000 square feet.
So my question is, based on what I heard from public feedback, what specifically is the town getting for 10,000 extra square feet?
I will say the biggest difference for the senior center does not have now is any gym or recreational space. Anytime they are able to do fit pickleball, it means closing something else down, which is kind of their, what's the right word for it, Michelle? What do you call that room now? Their multifunction space, or we called it a number of things. So that has to be, anything that happens in there has to be stopped, and they can set up one pickleball court. So the biggest change, I would say, and the larger number would be the recreational space.
And roughly, what's the cost of 10,000 square feet to this senior center?
What's the cost?
Yeah, how much does 10,000 square feet cost?
I'm looking. I mean, it's hard. I think I don't know if Tom can jump in, but I think it's hard to kind of take out certain portions of it to see the cost of it. But I guess we could look at dividing what that big cost is and minus a third of it, right?
Right.
We don't. Those numbers have not been totally solidified. I don't know, Tom. Do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I could just say that's a complicated answer because it depends on what type of square footage you're removing or adding from the building. But if you're talking about just the gymnasium alone, which has a footprint of approximately 6,500 square feet, that might be a $3 or $4 million piece of the project. You know, the other difference in square footage is basically redundant, a secondary multifunction space, which is a large multifunction space that can be divided in three. There were some comments this evening about programming. I would point out to town council that a very extensive and exhaustive program study and exercise was done at the beginning of this process. Between 2015 and 2017. It was reevaluated when this project was taken up in its second iteration in 2020. It's been confirmed multiple times and been approved, not only by prior committees and the council. So the program that's been established for the senior center and / community center has really been vetted exhaustively. I know that a lot of the neighbors aren't privy to that, just because, you know, they've only recently been sort of invested in the project since the project took up its study at the Grace Church site. All of that material is available, it's public record, and we could probably present that as needed. But the size difference between the two centers, as Lori mentioned, is mostly accommodated within the gymnasium and the larger multifunction room. But the benefits is a revised plan, a more functional floor plan, a much more flexible and programmable space.
I know the council has, I've been on the council for all these years. I don't think we approved anything in particular with respect to a new senior center or community center. But I would pose that question to you, Lori, in terms of the current functions at Priscilla Place. I'm sure our senior center director has approved your proposed uses, spaces, et cetera.
Michelle has been an integral part of this.
Yeah.
And even the previous senior center director since the beginning. You know, we can look at the space as it is now, but beyond just the condition of the building, the spaces themselves aren't even used to the extent they can do. There could be more there. Obviously, it's limited because you're not going to add more to that building and the condition it's at now. So Michelle has been with us every step of the way. She's in constant contact with the architects as different things come up. There's a section of that's just social services, which is her what she oversees, and there's more to that than there used to be. But as far as the senior center components, she's been a big part of this. What she sees that they use now, what she sees as best practices in other buildings, and I think it's really important to stress the importance of the recreational space. I think one of the speakers kind of alluded to the fact of that necessity not only for seniors. I know the people have been functioning on the recreational space as community use, but I think from our perspective, the recreational space is best used by the seniors, and we hope we can continue to run that. And I will remind people that seniors are now considered to be 55 and up, so probably looking around at quite a few here. But, you know, I think looking at it that way, you know, part of our charge is to be an up-to-date center. So to just base it on what we already have, it would seem to be short-sighted.
I have a few more follow-up questions. Mr. Pifko, go ahead.
Lori, I have a question for you. Was there any thought ever given to keeping the structure? It's a mid-century modern church. It has some history in Trumbull. Mm-hmm. I drove around it today, and I thought, you know, I know the easy thing is to bulldoze it and start all over.
Not so easy,
but well,
I know
you know, an awful lot of the community centers and senior centers that I visited when I had your position, were other municipal buildings that were converted over to senior centers or to other functional things. It really is a beautiful thing in a city or a town when they use what is already there and repurpose it. Okay, the community is happier with it. It looks like it belongs better, and it can be functional. You know, prime example is on the corner of Chapel and Sherman in downtown New Haven. That's a church across the street from St. Raphael's Hospital. That is an old church, an 1800s church. That is a modern office building beyond the front door. You know, and that can be done. It may involve a little more, you know, ingenuity and a little more contemplation, but I think the neighborhood would probably appreciate keeping that main structure, at least as part of the center, and then building off the back of it and keeping that type of thing.
I mean, it obviously was something that we first looked at. I will let, again, Tom jump in when he wants, but the space.
I can take that one.
Oh, he'll jump in first, and then I'll add on.
I'm sorry, Joe. That's a great point, and there are many facilities that have been repurposed throughout the state. And the reality is reusing an existing building is a very sustainable approach. But the existing structure, the dimensions, the size, the scale, do not in any way, shape, or form meet any of the specific program requirements for the to address the senior center programming that would address senior center needs for the next 25 to 30 years. So it was very easily determined that, unfortunately, that existing facility can't be repurposed and meet the needs. Additionally, because of where that building is positioned on the site, it really wouldn't allow for footprint of the multifunction space and the gym to fit on the site behind it and accommodate parking and accommodate access. So it was something that we looked at. It just doesn't work. But it's a very good idea.
And I will say we have talked about being able to repurpose something in that building to give, credence to the historical, parts of it. But when looking inside of it and looking at, as Tom said, what our program needs are, it wouldn't fit.
I have a couple of other areas of questioning. Okay. Things that have been brought up, such as a signal or a crosswalk across Main Street. Now that's involves the state.
Yeah, so in the traffic study, which you probably didn't get to all 214 pages, hopefully, but there is discussion about that. And from my understanding and interpretation of what the traffic engineers explained to us is that the state does not like putting a crosswalk in between two signalizations. They like where the one at Churchill Road is, and that the fact that we can make it walkable to that is a benefit. That they would, the traffic engineers do not feel and strongly feel that the state would not ever approve a crosswalk straight in the middle in front of the building.
I see this area very similarly to 111 across 25 by Old Mine Park, where we have a series of lights already. We have a series of traffic signals here.
Right.
You just can't queue traffic in such a short distance.
Yes.
And I know what they did across 25 over there was they eventually did put a signal further up the hill, but now you have to walk up there.
Right.
Same scenario will have to prevail here, I think.
Yes.
A couple of other issues. Some of the public comment has been about blasting, environmental testing, concern with tree, taking down all the trees. Can you address that?
Well, I can, and I wish we had an opportunity to kind of show some pictures, but if you've seen any of the pictures, yes, the trees in the front, the plan is to take them down. They were looked at by 3 tree wardens, that yes, they do work for the town, but they looked at them separately, felt that no matter what ended up in that building, that they did not think that those were sustainable over time. Evidently, some are cabled. A lot of big tree talk that I won't fully be able to explain correctly, but that they did not think there was longevity there. But if you look at our plan, the goal is to put multiples of other trees, mainly as buffers to the neighbors. That was part of our conversation with the Conservation Commission. They'd like some input on what that looks like, what's native to this area. They talked about some pollinator pathways. There's a number of things that they'll be able to will use their expertise to move on, as well as the landscape architects that will be part of the plan.
I know in January, the landscaping, the lighting was not done yet, the traffic study, et cetera. You have all of that designed, so to speak, and be ready to give us that in detail
it's time to
in
jump in
April.
again. We have what was commissioned to this point, and I know we've had this discussion before, is trying to get as much detail to really totally understand this project without pouring a lot more money into it until the town of Trumbull says that this is something they want to happen. So we believe the architects have engaged other members to really give us a really clear picture. There are more detailed things to do with drainage and those kind of things, more landscaping, more lighting conversations, and all that will come to you in January. So there is more. Those will always be taken to another level once you get into more final plans.
Okay. Council, any other questions? Mr. Wolf.
Hi, Lori. Yeah, I also have concerns about the blasting because several people in the audience, so I would love to hear the architect. In addition to that, if just out of curiosity, the current senior center, pickleball aside, love to know the most, activity and demand, daily volume, like how many people come in and out a day, and how many people are non-residents.
I don't have all those in front of me. Michelle might be able to help us some. I will tell you the pickleball is probably the number one demand, right? The lunchtime wave is a very popular thing as well. So we're trying to make that a more pleasant experience. Michelle, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure.
I'll put you on blast here. She's the expert.
Hi, Michelle Jacob, the Director of Human Services, and that includes the Senior Center. So, yeah, Lori's right. We've been working together a long time on this. Pickleball is popular, but we don't have that many in comparison to other programs because we only have access to one court and only so many people can play at a time. A lot of our aerobics classes are really crowded. Our auditorium isn't that big. I think if we can get 40 participants in there, it gets pretty tight. Our members are fantastic. They all want to share the space. They can't stretch out as far as they want to, but they want to include everybody. So we do have some classes that are pretty crowded. We also have classes that are less attended. It just depends on their interest. On Tuesday, we just had to redo our schedule. We're constantly redoing our schedule. Traffic jams. We're getting busier and busier. We have a lot of programming going on. We try to honor everyone's request, but when we do that, then we have a traffic jam. There's no parking. We had a car accident the other day. So it's a constant juggle of just trying to keep everything safe, meet the needs of the request of our members, and offer the programs that they want to see.
And just to piggyback off of Mr. Pifko, wouldn't it make sense to refurbish? There's not enough room to do those activities, a class of 50 plus or whatever for
in the current church.
Yoga.
No.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could add, Lori, just to answer the question about the blasting.
Yes.
Blasting is something that's pure speculation at this point. We suspect there's some rock on site. It's a part of our task to do the geotechnical investigations. Those are going to be happening shortly. We've solicited proposals. But even if there is rock present, rock removal can happen a number of different ways. It's not just blasting. It depends on the type of rock, how it's done, how much of it is done. So it's far too premature to just presume that there will be blasting and it would affect the neighbors' structural integrity of their homes. Just so the committee knows, if blasting were something that were necessary, there's a very specific process that would have to be put in place, including pre-blasting investigations of each adjacent structure and their foundations. It's a very time-consuming process. Obviously, it's something that would affect the cost of the project. but we don't know if there's going to be blasting or significant rock removal at this time. It's suspected that there's some. We will know more in the coming weeks.
And I'll just add to that, one of the things that's been brought up a lot is about the demolition and concerns from neighbors. That was a thing that at Long Hill Village, they talked about vermin a lot. I didn't think I'd talk about that so much in an hour, but how things will be handled in any demolition. And it's common sense to some extent, but worth expressing that there are some really rigorous standards about how things like this have to happen and have to be met. I think having the town oversee this even probably brings those standards up a little higher if possible. So I think that's something to be kept in mind. Yes, it sounds scary, demolition and other things, but the standards are pretty clear and have to be followed.
Thank you.
Mr. Pifko?
Yeah, I know you've probably answered this before, but on a daily basis, what's your average attendance to the
At the senior center currently?
Yeah.
Where are we at?
I mean, that's really.
It varies. I know, and I know what I wanted to piggyback on what Michelle was saying is programming is really important, and especially if we do consider the potential community aspect of that, I think the programming is really important. Michelle's already has shown a lot of flexibility with that. We'd expect that from anybody who's using the facility, and especially in regards to the neighbors, there's ways to kind of get these programs going in and out in a way that's functional without overbearing, and I think that's had to be a focus where you are now and will continue to be. Okay, so use.
Yeah, I'll just add, it's so hard to give a number. Our membership changes every day, participation changes every day. We have our regulars that come 5 days a week. We have people that come once a month, twice a week, depending on the program we're offering. Some of our programs are only for 6 weeks, so we don't see people for a while until they come back. We could have up to 200 individuals a day, but that trickles in all day. They never all come at the same time, and they never all leave at the same time, and that's because they all stay for different activities. We might have a support group going, an exercise class, a lecture, lunch is starting, the buses come in, but they're all arriving at different times, and they're all staying for different programs. So it's a real slow trickle in and out of the center, but we could have up to 200 a day, maybe more. Don't forget we have staff, but it doesn't seem like that much, to be honest. It could be more on days of higher level activity. But you know what? I don't know if anyone has been on Priscilla Place, but we're on a dead-end street, and it's a residential street. So when we had snow last week or 2 weeks ago, and you have cars parked on the street on both sides, you can only get one car down and one car up. So we're out there directing traffic. It was like 20 degrees. And we're trying to get everybody to stop coming in off of Nichols so we can get people out of the center. And I think the entire neighborhood was having oil delivered that day to their homes. So everything adds up, and it's always in short amount of time, but these are just little inconveniences when we're tucked away like this on a tiny side street.
Okay, so you raised an interesting point that you have buses coming in. So what proportion of that 200 people a day come by bus? And how many do you have 200 cars coming in, or
No.
100
right.
cars coming in?
Right. So our buses hold between 12 to 14 individuals. On busy days, we have up to 2 buses coming in, and they're always at the same scheduled time. And our other drivers are actually out taking individuals to doctor's appointments, grocery shopping. So really, our buses leave, they come back and drop off, they leave and come back and drop off, and that's it for the day. So they're not a lot of traffic. But up to 28 individuals come a day on the bus. We have a lot of people that come in on GBT. There's something called GBT Access. They schedule a ride. A lot of people that carpool as well.
Thank you.
And there is a bus stop in front of the proposed site now.
Mr. Foreman, you had a follow-up, and then Mr. Cinto.
Yes, thank you. Just a question kind of following on this idea of repurposing the building, not necessarily that, but do you have alternate designs of varying size, utility, and cost that, can help, show like strengths and weaknesses of those designs relative to the one you're proposing to us
For this
here?
site?
For this site, for this center on this spot.
I will say no, and we've had various designs throughout the years, right, at different locations where it kind of fit. For the components that are necessary for what we've been proposed to do, this is the most ideal configuration. People have talked about turning it the other way. The slope of the property makes that very difficult to do, but this is probably the most direct and compact configuration for the components that are necessary.
Mr. Cinto, you had a question?
Yeah, this is for Michelle.
Sorry, Michelle.
I will. One of the biggest complaints of the current senior center is the amount of town vehicles that are parked in the back. Trailers, EMS trailers, the buses are there. Is that stuff still parked there? And in the new building, are you gonna fill up the parking lot with all these trailers and to make a second parking garage for the town trucks like they do over there now?
There are no trailers parked at the senior center.
There has been.
There has been one when I believe I started in 2016, and EMS did have a trailer there, but that has been moved for quite some time, probably maybe around the pandemic or before. We do have 3 buses at the senior center. Most of them are out on the road all day, so there might be one parked in the back, maybe 2 by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But those are usually out on the road, so it doesn't really take up a parking spot. And we do have 1 car for social services, and it's a shared car for all staff to use when necessary.
Thanks.
Mr. Dorsey?
I just wanted to confirm, you're saying that we should be getting or hearing about or receiving a budget for the construction sometime in the next week or 2, correct?
Yes, they looked for 3 estimates, and those should be all coming in this week.
Will part of that budget include operating costs for maintenance in the future?
So I know with the budget, there's hard and soft costs. As far as operating costs, we haven't talked about that. I mean, staff-wise, the senior center is going to be what the senior center was. What would happen with the other community center aspect of it will be obviously something for the town to decide. I think there is a small office that is currently labeled as a Parks and Rec office to have a person in there to oversee it. As far as maintenance, I mean, obviously we're trying to build a high-efficiency building. So I'm not sure if that will be in part of the budget, but it can definitely be part of the discussion. But the goal being that it's going to be a highly efficient building with a lot of whatever we can to create a more efficient maintenance costs. You're welcome.
Ms. Lenzen?
Just to kind of piggyback off of Mr. Foreman's question.
Sorry, I'm like, oh my.
Oh, that's okay. Hi, over here in the back. I know that when we looked at the Veterans Center and when they were doing the development of the plans for that, they had done what's referred to as ad alternate, where there were things that they really needed that the veterans and the first responders knew they really had to have, and then there were things that they referred to as ad alternate. Is there any way that that can be built into this plan so that we are able to sort of look at maybe not completely alternative building designs, but, well, this is what we really need to start with, and this is an ad alternate. And if this is going to cost more, then we may have to pull back on this.
Right.
Just to give some more options as we're moving forward.
Yeah, and this is Justin, maybe the architects can jump in. My first gut reaction to that is we really are, I don't want to say a bare bones because 30,000 square feet is not bare bones, right? But as component-wise, what we build is, we think, what is needed. I think material-wise, those kind of things we could be looking at, different alternatives for ad alternatives, I guess you would consider them. But space-wise, I don't see anything in the building that we would take out. I mean, unless, there was a decision that something had to be. I think we all in the committee feel very strongly about the recreational space. There's always been conversation about how big that should or shouldn't be. I'll have my pickleball people over here, saying 3 is a minimum. I think we really look at that space as being able to use it for a number of different things. It is dividable, and we look at Boy Scout meetings or other kind of whether it's recreational activities or just meetings in general that can be used for. So we're trying to make the most out of every space that's there. But we can always, as you look at the components, we can discuss the necessity of each of them, if that would be helpful. But I think any of the potential changes may be more in materials and decisions about, how far we want to go with certain things.
Mr. Mecca.
I know we're not exactly there yet, but what comes up often, and what came up tonight was, what is this going to look like in terms of aesthetics, right? Not only as we drive by, but as one of the neighbors had said, and any parts or aspects of what they could see beyond the buffer, right, on all sides. Is there any way in which we can provide a little more information about what we think it might look like, number one? And number two, if it's too premature to do that, at what stage of this process will we get a better idea of the aesthetics, the visual?
Right, there's a lot of pictures out there now. The ones specific to Grace Church as far as showing the different angles are looking more about the site itself. But the pictures, any of the pictures you see on any of our presentations, even the front picture, will give you a good idea of what the building looks like. It's really pretty, I'll say that. If any of you know architects, they like to make things really pretty. But through the last decade, almost decade that QA&M has been a part of this, they've really understood the culture of Trumbull and have been really specific about having to fit in to the neighborhood. I'll tell you right now that the height of the building from the front is actually shorter than the church as it is now, as we're looking at it now. At the back is obviously 2 stories. That's the church. I think it's like 1.5 now. But it's really aesthetically very pleasing, as well as being efficient in our eyes. I mean, that really hasn't changed that much. It feels like a Trumbull building.
If I can add, Lori, at the Hardy Lane site, there were real concerns about the height and scale of the building as it's seen coming down Hardy Lane, and we prepared some photo montages with rendering of the proposed building incorporated. I think that's something we could incorporate probably by the next council meeting and presentation. That is a lot of work, but I think we can pull that together. Our goal was to have actual rendered images of the building with materials and scale and color by that meeting, and if we can get some good photos of the neighbors and of the adjacent structures, we can create some montages for the council to see.
But the front of the building really hasn't changed much as it's gone through different iterations. It's really the same concept.
Ms. Isaac, go ahead.
This is Michelle. Sorry.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Just if you could speak to the importance of having the exercise room and also the multi-purpose room, because now when there's a luncheon going on, everything has to go in and be broken down, taken out. You can't have other programs. I know there's like monthly luncheons that go on, and then there's also the physical. So you were talking about some of the exercise, but also everything else that goes on in that room, which can only happen in one spot, which is then limiting also.
Right, so we have our auditorium, multi-purpose facilities room, whatever you want to call it. Keeps being renamed, but okay, so to answer your question, big parties are a huge thing of senior centers. Everyone likes to get out and be social. They like dances, they like luncheons. We haven't been able to host those lately. One, the parking is such an issue. We have 55 spots, I believe, in the back. Most senior centers, when they have big luncheons, expect 150 to 200 people, and we don't get to do that. I don't think they're very happy with us for that. They want to get together and have big events. We don't get to host that. But if we do host an event, we do put a maximum attendance on it. And we can block off that room for that day, which is a great celebration, but it means that everybody who comes every Tuesday for aerobics, Tai Chi, all of their classes were canceled. And that's not fair. We offer weekly classes that are consistent and they can depend on and count on, and we have to constantly cancel and reschedule, and the instructors aren't happy, our seniors aren't happy. So we do need additional space so we can have all of that.
Smile a while, I know also, so when you're having performances like that, so, just trying to give an idea. I know when you did make that sheet where you did look at all the different rooms at one time, it was jam-packed with things, and so just, the importance of having both.
And that's really where the components came up with, right? What was missing and what was going wrong at our current senior center, the things we're trying to right with this one. And I think talking about those recreational spaces too does bring in a little bit of the community aspect. I had a young person say to me, I'd like to be able to take an aerobics class and not have it be in the library at the high school. And those are the kind of things. Somebody spoke really nicely about bringing communities together. I think there's a way to do this, but I think there's a way to control it too. I mean, I know we're talking about parking and that. We purposely scaled back the parking lot in here so that there is some control of how many people are coming in and out of here. It's purposeful. We're doing that to protect the neighbors, to keep things under control, to put some things into place to have some stopgaps. So I think those are important elements to keep in mind, to be able to do the most with what we have, but to keep it within reason.
All right, I appreciate the update. Mr. Marsh, you have
Just
something to
really
add?
quickly, I wanted to say thank you to Lori for the presentation and the work of your committee. Many years ago, I read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And
This isn't it.
yeah, noticeably absent is chairing a building committee. Having chaired the aquatics committee, I can tell you it is it's an arduous task and many times a thankless job. So thank you on behalf of the
I
council.
certainly appreciate that. I really do. And I want to stress, I know sometimes I seem to be public enemy number one, and the neighbors, we are trying to listen. We all live here. We all understand that, the people's biggest, beyond their families, is their home. That's their biggest asset. And we really hope that we can do something that benefits people without hurting others, and that is absolutely our goal. So I'll take a couple knocks for that.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, architects. I think that will conclude our discussion and update for the Community Facilities Building Committee. I want to thank all the members of the public also for coming out. We'll endeavor to get as many answers for you as we can, and look forward to a formal presentation. Let's take a 5-minute recess. Dennis, 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're back on the record. Thank you, everybody. If there's no objection, by unanimous consent, I'd like to take up item 6, resolution TC 30-129. Hearing no objection, by unanimous consent, can we move resolution TC 30-129 to the floor? Mr. Dorsey, go ahead, please.
Resolution TC 30-129, be it resolved that the Trumbull Town Council is cognizant of the application for funding to the state OPM STEEP 2025 grant program in an amount not to exceed $500,000 for the Veterans and First Responders Center Phase 2 construction, and authorizes First Selectman Vicky A. Tesoro to execute and file such application and all subsequent amendments, reports, or related documents in order to administer and implement the project. Full resolution attached.
Second.
Thank you. Committee report, Mr. Pifko, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. The Director of Economic and Community Development, Rena Bacalar, explained the grant has been submitted. It was required to be submitted the previous Thursday, which she did with a pending resolution. They applied for $497,000 in STEAP funding, supplemental funding for the vertical construction of the Veterans and First Responder Center. To date, they raised $4,029,000 towards that project in a variety of grants. The project's construction manager, in his review of the budget, felt they might need more money, not $497,000, but somewhere between $250,000 and $400,000. They applied for $497,000 to ensure there is enough. There are added alternatives, i.e. technology. If they are awarded the grant money, they could do everything and perhaps additional enhancements. They should know by the beginning of April. It is her opinion that if they get this money, they will be fully funded. Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Pifko. Any update? Ms. Bacalar.
No update. I did get a call from our STEEP contact who asked just a couple of questions. It seemed positive, but I have no details on a decision. And our full legislative delegation did submit a letter of support to Secretary Martin Heft. He acknowledged receipt of it, supporting the project.
Great. Any questions? Ms. Isaac?
Whoops. Does that money include and I can't remember what the E is, furniture, fixtures, and whatever the E is?
It doesn't
Equipment,
include non-construction related FFE, so things like doorknobs and that kind of stuff is part of the construction, but like the furniture and those kinds of things would be in a separate.
So it's still separate funding?
That's separate funding.
Okay, thank you.
All right. No questions or comments. Can we adopt this resolution by unanimous consent? Do we need emergency
I'd
legislation?
like it, please. Thank you.
Can I have a motion?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you.
And good night. All right. Can we, by unanimous consent, take up items 3, 4, and 5 out of order? Any objections? Hearing none. Let's take resolution TC 30-126. Mr. Mecca, would you move that to the floor, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Resolution TC 30-126, be it resolved that the submission of a funding application for the Caregiver Services Grant is hereby authorized and identifies Vicky A. Tesoro, First Selectman, as the individual authorized to sign the application and all subsequent amendments, reports, and related documents in order to administer and implement the project.
Second.
Thank you. Committee report, please. Mr. Pifko.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Michelle Jacob, Director of Human Services, explained that they apply for this grant every year. Her department provides information and resources for caregivers that come to them. They guide, direct, and try to get them connected to benefits and services and provide public education and counseling. They usually get around $20,000, but last year the funds were cut. They're looking for $10,000 to $15,000 this year. The application is due March 19th. Emergency legislation was requested. It was confirmed. This is a federal grant and has a 25% match. The motion was carried unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Pifko. Ms. Jacob, do you have anything to add on this?
I do not.
You do not. Council members, any questions? No? All right, then I'll ask, can we adopt Resolution TC 30-126 by unanimous consent? All right, so adopted. Is there a motion for emergency legislation?
So moved.
Second.
Second, Ms. Satin, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Anybody opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous? All right, let's move to TC 30-127. Ms. Sather, would you move this to the floor, please?
Sure. Resolution TC 30-127, be it resolved that the submission of the funding application for the enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities of the Federal Transit Administration, Section 5310 program, is hereby authorized, and be it further resolved that Vicky A. Tesoro, First Selectman, is hereby authorized as the individual to sign the application and all subsequent amendments, reports, and related documents in order to administer and implement the project. Full resolution attached.
Second.
Thank you. Committee report, Mr. Pifko.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Michelle Jacob explained this was for their transportation department. It's common to replace the senior vehicles every 5 years, but it was changed to 7 years. They are hoping to purchase and replace their current vehicle. They have had it for about 7 years. She applied to replace it last year, but missed the deadline. The vehicle cost is $137,000, but it would be a bit more depending on what they want to put in it. It has a 20% match. The state pays 80%. When done using the vehicle, the town will recoup the funds by auctioning it off or reutilizing the vehicle. In the past, one of the vehicles was given to the police department and others were auctioned off. The committee suggested inquiring on the deposition of the current vehicle for a full town council meeting. Vote, motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. So there was a question there. When the vehicle that gets replaced, what becomes of that?
Right. I did discuss this with Doug Bogan, our garage supervisor. I believe since I've been here, since 2016, 3 buses have gone back to the garage. 2 were given to the police department, I believe, for their scuba team and their, the youth participants. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting their name, the cadets. They do have our most recent vehicle that we replaced there. And Doug was actually holding on to it because they did come out with new legislation that I did want to update everyone on, and we clarified today. You can resell the vehicle after you own it after 7 years. It used to be we would be able to sell it at fair market value, and however the town does an auction, I don't know. We would keep all the proceeds. Now we would be able to keep $5,000, and whatever is remaining in the sale, we would be able to keep an additional 20% of that. And the rest would be returned to the state, who would then return it to the federal government. So, if there was a sale of, say, $12,000, I think we would get $6,400 of it, just as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And he would auction off the vehicle.
Interesting. Wow, it's a lot of effort.
It's complicated.
Any other questions on this resolution? Hearing none, can we adopt this resolution, TC 3127, by unanimous consent? Hearing no objections, it's adopted. Is there a motion for emergency legislation?
It's due on April 1st. I didn't ask for it before. I think we have time. And I apologize if I should have that.
All right. I guess the last one was March 19th, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then we're good with that one.
Okay.
All right. Let's move to our next item, Resolution TC 30-128. Ms. Colon, would you move this to the floor, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Resolution TC 30-128, be it resolved that the submission of the funding application for the enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities of the Federal Transit Administration 5310 program operating funds is hereby authorized, and be it further resolved that Vicky A. Tesoro, First Selectman is hereby authorized as the individual to sign the application and all subsequent amendments, reports, and related documents in order to administer and implement the project. Full resolution attached.
Second.
Thank you. Committee report, please, Mr. Pifko.
Certainly. Michelle Jacob explained this was for transportation services. Currently, they bill the state for operating expenses. They bill at a rate of $38.04 an hour for all services they provide, minus transportation to and from the senior center, which is a match portion. It is at a 50% match. This year, they are applying for $60,000, which is the balance they have every year. If they don't use the funds, it rolls over to next year. Last year, they billed $31,000 to the state and will bill about $50,000 this year. For 6 months, they are billing $21,000, but we're short a bus driver, so that would be a bit higher. Last year, they applied for the years 2025 and 2026, and now they can apply only for 1 year, which is why the memo states they are applying for 2027. The vote, motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Anything to add, Ms. Jacob?
Nothing to add.
No? Any questions? No? All right. We adopt this resolution by unanimous consent. Any objections? Hearing none. Resolution's adopted. Do you need emergency legislation for this one? No. Oh, very good. Well, thank you for all your info
Thank
this
you.
evening. Which one do we have to? 130? Okay, let's take a resolution TC 30-130. Mr. Shively, would you move this to the floor, please?
You said TC 30-130 we're doing? Okay. Resolution TC 30-130, be it resolved that the license agreement by and between the Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection and Town of Trumbull is hereby approved, and that Vicky A. Tesoro, First Selectman, is hereby authorized to sign the license agreement.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Pifko, committee report, please.
Certainly. Deputy Emergency Management Director Andrew Kingsbury explained the following. This is a licensing agreement between the Department of Emergency Services and the Public Protection in the Town of Trumbull. It allows the town to use the state's infrastructure, radio towers, fiber networks, and various connections. Currently, Trumbull and neighboring towns are on the state land mobile radio network system. Trumbull Fire is currently on the same system. This is the system that the Connecticut State Police use to communicate over. It is transmitted on fiber rings. It is for radios, primarily Motorola radios are used, but the state does allow other vendors. The agreement is to allow emergency management, fire marshal's office, and any public safety in the future that would want to join the system. The town of Trumbull does not currently have an agreement in place, but the fire departments do because they are a separate district. A bulk purchase was made a few years ago, and this will formalize the agreement fire marshals have used in the system for a while. The agreement is necessary because the state is particular and wants the towns to buy the proper equipment that they approve of. This is a 5-year agreement with 4 automatic renewals for 5 years. There is no cost to the town. The town does not need to buy any equipment today, but they were told they would need this agreement in place if they were to purchase the equipment in the future. The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Pifko. We have Mr. Kingsbury with us. Do you have anything to add to the grant application?
Nothing to add, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions? All right, then. I'll ask for a vote on the resolution TC 30-130. Can we adopt this by unanimous consent? Is there any objections? Hearing none. Resolution's adopted. Do we need emergency legislation for this?
No.
No, we're good. Okay. Thank you. Have a good evening. Thanks for coming out and hanging out. All right, let's go to item 8, resolution TC 30-1 131. Mr. Buswell, would you move this to the floor, please?
Certainly. Resolution TC 30-124, be it resolved that Brandy Cooper, being the same, is hereby appointed as a member of the Trumbull Day Commission for a term extending to September 1st, 2029.
That's 124. I said 120. We did 120. 131. That's okay. Well, let's do that one. 124 is fine. Yeah. Okay. All right. Do we have a committee report from Mr. Dorsey?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Brandy Cooper of 24 Long Meadow Road was present and indicated her party affiliation as unaffiliated. She has been a resident since 2020. Serving on this commission is a good way to get embedded in the community, get to know people, and the people who make the town run. Vote motion carried by unanimous consent.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this resolution? If not, can we adopt this resolution by unanimous consent? Hearing no objections, the resolution is adopted. We'll move on to item 2, resolution TC 30-125. Mr. Lemoyne, would you move this resolution to the floor, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Resolution TC 30-125, be it resolved that Christopher Davis, being the same, is hereby appointed as a member of the Trumbull Day Commission for a term extending to September 1st, 2028.
Second.
Thank you. Committee report. Mr. Dorsey, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Christopher Davis, 163 Deerfield Drive, was present and indicated his party affiliation as a Republican. He had been a member of the Frenchtown Fathers Club. His daughter is in 6th grade now, and he wants to fill that void with something else. He helped last year at the tent on both days, had a great time, and is here to help. Vote motion carried by unanimous consent.
Wow, great. Questions, comments? If not, can we adopt resolution TC 30-125 by unanimous consent? Any objections? Hearing none, resolution's adopted. We'll move on to item 3, resolution TC 30-131. Okay, I'm reading from the Finance Committee agenda. It is item 8 on your scorecards. Okay, Ms. Malazzi, would you bring it to the floor, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Resolution TC 30-131, be it resolved that $425,000 is hereby appropriated from the general fund to 0101-3400-511152 employee benefits, fringe workers comp.
Second.
Committee report. Mr. Dorsey, please.
Maria Pyrus explained this is a heart and hypertension claim, which was before the town council a few months back. The payment has been made, and the account is now over budget by $195,000 due to this payment. The account needs to be covered for the rest of the year. Emergency legislation was requested. Vote motion carried by unanimous consent.
Ms. Pyrus is here. Any questions for her? Any updates? No. All right. No questions or comments. Can we adopt the resolution by unanimous consent? Hearing no objections, the resolution's adopted. Is there a motion for emergency legislation?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thank you. Anybody opposed? No abstentions. Unanimous. Move to resolution TC 30-132. Mr. Foreman, would you move it to the floor, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Resolution TC 30-132, be it resolved that $175,000 is hereby appropriated from the general fund to 01080800578806 Tree Warden Emergency Services.
Second.
Committee report, Mr. Dorsey, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Maria Pyrus explained this is to cover the emergency work from the August 3rd, 2024 windstorm. The storm was not covered by FEMA or any other funds. This brought the department's balance over budget and are asking to replenish $175,000 to hopefully cover the rest of the year. It was explained for FEMA to cover the storm, they would need to first deem this as a compensable claim. The August 13th storm did qualify for FEMA reimbursement. Deputy Emergency Management Director Andrew Kingsbury was present and explained how FEMA declarations work. It is on a county basis and is necessary to meet a county threshold. The storm was devastating to Trumbull, but it was localized to Easton, Trumbull, and Shelton. Unfortunately, it did not meet the thresholds. Federal FEMA uses counties to meet FEMA thresholds. We don't have a county government. Maria Pyrus has not heard back from the park superintendent on any other supplementals coming. She will talk directly with him. Vote, motion carried by unanimous consent.
Thank you. I remember that was a nasty storm. Took down 2 telephone poles, within a block of my house. Any other questions or comments? Maria, anything to add? Good. Okay. Can we adopt this resolution by unanimous consent? And hearing no objections, it is adopted. I think that's the end of our agenda. I thank everybody for a long, productive evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.